Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net with yet another pre-order stories. Now this one we're going to be showing you guys today is going to be very, very cool because as far as I found out, I looked it up before I did this video, and it turns out that this just shot up in value. At least the eBay prices of it I've seen have gone for about $150. So go figure when you hear my story about it, how I got it. Let me take you back to 2010 with a game called Splatterhouse. And this is the box that the game that the pre-order incentive came in. Splatterhouse was a game that was developed by Namco. It was originally an arcade game, which later got sequels posted on the the Sega Genesis. Splatterhouse 2 and Splatterhouse 3 were both Sega Genesis exclusives. The first time I was aware of Splatterhouse, or the first time I was ever exposed to Splatterhouse, and I didn't even know it was an exposure to Splatterhouse, was actually I found out that some clips of it or some screenshots of it were used and adjusted for a series online that I really liked called The New Adventures of Captain S, which unfortunately is defunct, has been defunct for quite a while. But the first season is currently up for watching for free online, and if you want to watch something that really harkens back to classic 90s teen comedies mixed with a little bit of Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, and you're a Sega fanboy or fangirl, you should totally watch it. But needless to say, I was not familiar with Splatterhouse. But in 2010, Namco released a remaster of Splatterhouse. And by remaster, I don't mean more like a reboot, a reimagined, a new Splatterhouse. Basically, a retelling of the original story with basically the next generation, or what was then the next generation of graphics. So you basically took a game that was originally a 2D brawler and essentially turned it into a beefy adventure slash kind of like God of War-ish type fighting game. Adventure fighting game with a story, with an expanded story. I could get behind something like that. I was very much into the extreme violence of the God of War games at the time. I was totally on the console front at that time. I had an Xbox 360. I had a PS3. I used them regularly. Splatterhouse was the kind of game that I would, on paper, be interested in, except it was never really promoted. The game came out, there was little to no fanfare. And that is because, from what we know about it now, and I would totally recommend a couple of other videos about it, the game came out to no fanfare because the publisher had no, they had sunk money into it, and they basically did, at least the assumption is that they had sunk so much money into its development that there was either no money left for promotion, or the publisher saw the final product, knew that they couldn't get sales out of it regardless, and so they decided to cut their losses. Whichever story is the truth, maybe something in the middle, I don't know. But that's the current understanding of it right now. When the game finally did come out, the mainstream reviewers completely trashed it. And that was where my first exposure to it was, basically seeing all of the negative reviews of it across the web. My first exposure to at least that version of Splatterhouse, Splatterhouse 2010, was this negative review, and just seeing all of these negative reviews of it. So I thought to myself, oh, well, there's no reason whatsoever for me to pick this game up because it's obviously bad. All the reviewers have trashed it. Fast forward at least a couple of months later, maybe a year later, I don't know, I was watching Derek Alexander's videos. He used to call himself the Happy Video Game Nerd. Now he kind of runs a channel called Stop Skeletons from Fighting. It's the same channel, but he has since changed his name and his motif and his style. But this guy was a huge Splatterhouse fanboy. He has been, from what I can see from watching his videos, this guy has loved Splatterhouse since the very beginning. And so he was basically doing his reviews of the Splatterhouse games, and somehow I came across his Splatterhouse videos. Don't ask me how I did. Maybe it was a YouTube crawl as I stumbled upon it. I don't know. But I sat back and I started watching his Splatterhouse reviews. And finally, I watched his review of the 2010 version of Splatterhouse for the Xbox 360s and the PS3. And he loved the game, despite the fact that he had argued, a lot of what the mainstream reviewers had said about it actually I agree with, but I believe that they basically judged those standards as to too harshly. When I played, when he played the final version of the game, he said the game had so many other positives about it that that he still found himself enjoying the game. And I thought to myself, you know what? At this point, the game was probably $10 on Amazon. I'll give it a whirl. I've got myself a Xbox 360. I'll pick it up. I want to see if this game is as bad as the mainstream reviewers say it is, or as good as Derek Alexander says it is. So I popped the game into my Xbox 360, and I freaking loved it. The game spoke to me. It had incredible voice acting by, I believe, Josh Keaton and certainly Jim Cummings. It had a great soundtrack that harkened back to great soundtracks that I remembered from games like Infected on the PSP. It had an adult subject matter with violence that was clearly mainstream from games like God of War. It didn't seem... I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, it has long loading times. Okay, sometimes, character clipping and placement for puzzles might be a little frustrating. But I had watched some of Derek's tips, like make sure you have momentum when you go into a 2D jump. Otherwise, you're going to lose, otherwise you're not going to have enough momentum to clear the jump. I had no problem with any of the stuff that the mainstream reviewers were basically arguing. And I ended up beating that game and enjoying every second of it. I got all the collectibles. I played all the levels. I played all the difficulties. I freaking love the game. And this is kind of this, I guess you would argue, would probably be the start of where I started losing faith in the quote-unquote mainstream gaming press. And I got into an argument about this recently online, and I'm not going to go into it because I felt his argument had no merit. Derek probably paid for his game. And I will tell you, I will put more stock, whether it's a film, whether it's a game, whether it's a book, whether it's an album. But my point is that I feel that part of the reason why the YouTube generation has taken over when it comes to reviews and people put more stock into or put more clout or way higher the opinions of the YouTube reviewers is because the YouTube reviewers don't pay for their games. And if they don't pay for their games, they'll tell you. So needless to say, this is a book about pre-order stories. I just told you flat out, I didn't pre-order my game because I hadn't heard about it until after it came out. Where did I get the pre-order from? Well, GameStop offered a pre-order incentive in this box for anybody that purchased Splatterhouse Day 1. My guess is they ended up with a lot of these because shortly afterwards, GameStop started their power-up rewards. This was the pre-power-up reward system that you guys may know and love today. Nowadays, your power-up rewards are basically going towards, kind of similar to how it does with Best Buy, you're basically going towards buying extra online coupons for you spend $250, you spend $500, you get a $5 gift card that you have to use within a week or something like that. That's typically how GameStop does it today. But back then, GameStop would actually give away exclusive promo items and stuff like that for accumulating power-up rewards points. And one of the very first things that they actually started to offer as per their power-up rewards, and because they hadn't started extremely weighing their points, so you'd have to pay $10,000 at GameStop just to get one simple keychain. For a very, at the time, what was essentially, I felt, a low cost of power-up tickets, you got this. This is resin. This is a resin version of the Terror Mask. And I've had this thing in my collection for 10 years. And I had cracked it open. Part of the reason why I cracked this thing open was so that you guys could, I didn't want to have to unbox it. But take a look at how good this looks. I've kept this in wraps for 10 years. I was worried when I opened this thing up that this thing was going to start to melt or something like that. But this is in very, very, very good shape. And now this thing commands high prices. I looked this thing up. This thing cost $150 on eBay last I checked. And that's just a testament to just how freaking cool it is. I mean, look at this thing. Now, a couple of cool things. Obviously, I already told you about what my experience was with playing Splatterhouse, why I picked this thing up in the first place. I do not regret picking this up. But I actually have a few cool postscripts to that story, actually. I actually got to talk to Jim Cummings about 2 years after, about a year or two after I played the game. I asked Jim Cummings personally about his experience with the game, and this was the only question. It's actually on my YouTube channel if you want to watch it. I did it. There was a private Q&A of Jim Cummings. There was a couple of them actually, but I actually did do a private Q&A with him and a bunch of other gaming press and stuff. And true story, actually, my question was the one question that made him blush, and I got a kick out of that. Basically being asked about the Terror Mask, and he does feel the Terror Mask is a bad guy. What do you think of this? I mean, I've done videos with this thing in the past. I actually did an unboxing of it in with an old camera a couple years ago, so you could probably look that up as well. But this isn't I mean, the one problem that I have with it, granted I didn't pay anything for it, it won't fit over your face. Its scale is this. I don't even think this would fit over a child's face. It's like not big enough or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to push it. Maybe this thing is real, and if I get too close, it'll like surround my face like the mask did or something like that. So we're not going to risk it or anything. But this thing is really, really cool. And I don't know if it's worth the $150 price tag I've seen for it on eBay, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, So yeah, I really like Splatterhouse. Part of another reason why I'm doing this video is because I feel that there's some attention that should be paid to Splatterhouse. I know Konami seems to be the one going full gung-ho over the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. By all means, go for it. I'm a little upset that they didn't include both the Japanese version and the American version for the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. It'd be cool. I would have preferred like they did what Sega did with the Genesis version for the Genesis Mini, and that was basically if you switch the language, it'll switch the version of the game to the alternate version ROM or the alternate regions ROM. Obviously, like Sony didn't do that to their own peril because absolutely nobody bought the Sony PlayStation Mini. Maybe I'll do a future videos about Splatterhouse, but this was such a look at this thing. Well, hopefully you guys got a good eyeful of this. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope they make more Splatterhouse games. I'm looking forward to the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. Until next time, guys, my name is Maniac with GamingSuccess.net. Take care. Over and out.